Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. Today we're joined by Neha. Neha, it's nice to see you. It's been a while. I know we tried to connect a few times before we got this, but can you believe it's actually over 15 years now since we were in law school, all those times ago in Osgood. So it's nice to see you. Maybe you could tell a quick intro about who you are, and then we could talk about, one of the things that, you're 2 years into is being a bencher on the Law Society.
Uh, JP, one of my students told me last term that I didn't look a day over 37. And I was like, oh, honey. So you've just reinforced that for me, JP, because I am in my early 40s and I am proudly in my early 40s. But yes, it was over 15 years ago or 15 years ago that we were at law school together. And it was only good memories, though. So I'm Neha Chugh. I am proudly a criminal defense lawyer, and I do a little bit of family law in Eastern Ontario. My practice is in a place called Cornwall, Ontario, which is very close to the border of Ontario and Quebec and the border of New York. Um, I have three wonderful kids that are 14, 11, and 6. So that's my other full-time job is being their mom. Um, Let me see. I'm a solo small firm owner in Cornwall, Ontario. So I have an associate and a law partner who works with me. I have staff. We maintain an office. So I know the daily grind of all of that work. I have a full practice and clients who I serve. And I'm also a bencher with the Law Society of Ontario. And in that role, I serve committees. Um, Primarily, I'm on the Access to Justice Committee. I'm on the Equity and Indigenous Affairs Committee. I was on the Law Society Tribunal Committee, but I'm moving over to the Professional Regulation Committee. And I do serve as an adjudicator on the Law Society Tribunal. So those are kind of the hats that I wear. I've been a bencher for 2 years, so it's my first term. And I did run with the Good Governance Coalition, but it's been very obvious over the past 2 years that we don't think the same, we don't vote the same. We've had very lively dialogue, very lively discussions. And 2 years into it, so at the halfway mark, here we are. Still feel like I know nothing, but I have to say that as a lawyer, I've been practicing law for 14 years. I still feel like I know nothing. As a mom, I feel like I know nothing. And it's kind of neat to be in that position all over again, where you're constantly learning and constantly taking things in.
So again, 2 years in, like the halfway point, or just a little over the halfway point. I mean, do you regret running? Do you like what's happened? Do you not like? Is it kind of a mix of all of the above there? So maybe kind of give me a little, here's what it's been like to be a bencher for the last couple of years.
So, do I regret running? That was your question. No, I don't regret running. It was exhilarating to run. It was exciting to be part of something that was transformative. Uh, and becoming a bencher is like making 53 new friends really fast. And 53 friends, because like when you're in law school, you make, 300 friends on your first day of law school. But you quickly find out who your people are. You go to the social justice people, you find the corporate people. And in law school, I quickly found my people, and they were my people throughout. Um, in As a bencher, I'm meeting people from the north. I'm meeting Bay Street lawyers. I'm meeting a condo lawyer from Kitchener, Ontario. I'm meeting personal injury lawyers from Southwestern Ontario. Uh, it is so interesting and fun and um, thought provoking in terms of the conversations that we have to have all of these different people as my new friends. And so I've really enjoyed that aspect of it, getting close and being collegial with people who I never would have worked with before, lawyers who I never would have worked with before, learning about their lives, learning why they chose the practice that they chose, learning how they got to the practice that they chose. Um, I also have 5 new paralegal friends who are also very, very interesting and very dynamic in terms of the work that they're doing. Um, I have loved a lot of it. I've hated a lot of it. I've been exhausted by a lot of it. Um, I think what frustrates me as a bencher is there's just things that I just cannot do. I cannot talk about things that are discussed in secret. I cannot discuss in-camera discussions with the public. Um, I would say that I quite often get questions from licensees or want to be licensees about, I want to change the day of my bar exam, or I didn't get the letter in the mail that was supposed to verify this. Where is it? And I have a busy practice. I'm a busy mom and I'm a bencher. So I can't track down those things for people. And I would love to be able to be all things for all people. But it was a really steep learning curve about what the role of a bencher is and what the role of a bencher isn't. Um, Conversations at convocation can get heated and opinions can get heated. And sometimes opinions are um, very, very far apart in terms of worldviews or politics, and it can spark feelings. And so it's about really, taking a step out of it and listening, and not getting too, emotional about ideas or emotional about discussions, and really focusing on what our mandate is. Um, what have I loved? I mean, I've loved the parties and going out and meeting people. There's so many events. There's so many opportunities to hang out with licensees. So many doors have opened for events that I never would have gone to in my pre-venture life. I mean, I'm a solo small firm owner in Cornwall, Ontario. Um, and I am, going to events in the big city, and that's really fun. Um, what was really hard, what has been really hard, and what continues to be really hard, I have kids, and it is a big commitment to leave kids and to go into convocation or to go in for meetings or to go in for a party. And sometimes there's decisions to be made, like, am I going to my daughter's end of year pageant, or am I going to be, going to this special debate about a topic, or not debate, discussion about a topic that needs my vote? And those are decisions that I have to weigh very carefully. And I've had to have those conversations with myself as a lawyer. I've sat on Zoom court in the back of a car outside of my daughter's school, and I'm late picking her up. Uh, these things happen, and this is part of being a lawyer mom. This is part of being a bencher mom. But those are the tough decisions that I've had to make, um, and some of them were really heartbreaking. I want to go to a gala, but it's my son's final soccer game, or I'm about to get on a flight to Toronto for convocation, but my youngest has sprained his wrist. What do you do in those situations? Like, how do you decide? Can you be all things for all people? So those have been the difficult days.
And I guess, part of that difficulty, certainly as a bencher, our focus here today, is, halfway through, or a little bit more, or a little bit earlier than halfway through, we have this big eruption, right? That's coming across from all corners, with respect to the CEO pay scandal, and that has the effect of whatever. And we'll certainly get into some of the things you would have liked to do, and hopefully you can return to doing as a group, or no, your own personal ones. But I mean, everything about the law society comes to a screeching halt because every licensee who hears about it has the thought of, how did this happen? What happened? What's going on? What are the next steps? And, it makes it very difficult when you have all of these things you want to move forward on, but people don't want to leave that issue behind, and certainly it keeps coming up. So I think, obviously I'd be amiss not to bring it up, and certainly have you kind of, tell us a bit about kind of your perspective as a bencher, and how, your role was, and how everything kind of came about in the last I guess over almost a year now since everything kind of came to light.
Yeah, so in the first year as a bencher, you're really learning about the institution, and you're learning how to be a bencher, and you're learning um, how to effectively and efficiently get things done. And um, I'm a solo small firm owner, so if I decide for myself that I want to change the color of my notepads from yellow to purple in my office, I go on the Staples website and I buy myself purple notepads. But the Law Society is a giant institution, it's a bureaucracy, and there are layers of permission that have to happen before someone can make decisions. And so for me, it was a giant learning curve about bureaucracy and about how decisions are made. So I spent my first year just getting on that curve. So then fast forward, it's fall, winter, and you know, the business of law is so busy in December until everything shuts down for the break, right? We are going, going, going. Those are the busy hopping months. We're going to Christmas parties, but we're also getting those last minute motions in. And this erupts, right? So I'm thinking bandwidth. I'm thinking, okay, how do we manage this and what actually happened, right? So this was a really good lesson for me in personally as a lawyer and as a bencher in okay, we have to take this issue and we have to entrust it in the experts. So we have to give this to Justice O'Connor to look at and to investigate, and we have to trust his investigation and what he's doing, and we have to wait for the report. So a lesson in patience and not getting ahead of myself, and also in having to because it was all in camera and was meant to be kept secret. It was a matter of, I had to hang on to this, right? And we knew it was happening. And so as it was unfolding and as we received the report, yeah, it was, there's a lot of adjectives that can be ascribed to, what it felt like to read that report. And, you know, my obligations to licensees and how um, what questions I knew that I was going to have to field. Was it fair? What I found profoundly unfair was that the information was leaked to the press because we were all doing our best to keep it in camera. Those were our obligations as benchers. But then, you know, as it was leaked to the press, we had to deal with the questions, and we were unprepared because we didn't have the answers. Again, we're waiting for the people who are doing the investigation to give us the answers. We can't give answers that we don't have. And so it was really upsetting to have to address the leaks. And we I think we had to deal with every step in the process as it came out. And as a criminal defense lawyer, I can tell you, like, my clients come to me and the first meeting that I have with them is, okay, you've been arrested. This is the next step. I'm going to get the disclosure. Then I'm going to meet with the Crown. Then we're going to have a meeting with the judge. Then we're going to set dates. You have two choices, plea or don't plea, right? And the same thing, we had a problem. We had a committee that was dealing with the problem. Uh, we hired Justice O'Connor to look into it and to do his work with his team. That team was investigating. The benchers were going to receive answers. And we had to follow that process in order for there to be some sort of, accountability and consistency and predictability and you know, responsiveness and ability to have a discussion, not, you know, based on public outcry, but based on our reasoned ability to and reasoned opportunity to review the report.
And so now, obviously, we're that the reports come out, and you're kind of at a crossroads. There was recently the treasurer election, right? And in some capacity, I spoke to a couple of I guess the unsuccessful candidates about how they kind of saw that issue as to is this part of a larger need to reset or change or do things differently at the law society, and I guess based on the results. It can be interpreted as like, look, we had this issue, let's move past it. Or I mean, I guess maybe I'm just kind of leading into it. Maybe you can kind of tell me, from your position. I mean, you also, had a chance to be on the inside there as to, well, what does this now mean at this stage of, can we move past it and bring into focus, the mandate that you have and your colleagues as benchers have in terms of the remainder of your term, or uh, do we need to look back before we look forward, or I heard from a couple of those candidates there that they had varying positions with respect to that, and I guess there's a lot of varying positions within the benchers about kind of what our next move is. So I mean, obviously you can only speak for yourself, but what do you think in terms of the rest of the mandate now?
So I personally think that the three different positions from Treasurer Wardle, from Stephen Rothstein, from Murray Klippenstein are completely reflective of the different ideas that we hear at convocation. And you can see that reflected in the number of votes in the nominators. So the conversations that those three candidates were having are the conversations that we're having as benchers. And so it was a direct reflection of those conversations. And I can also say that those conversations are also being had by licensees. So the desire to um, uh, uh, review the scandal, to do an overhaul, the desire for change. Licensees, there are some licensees who want that. There are some members of convocation who want that. But there's also a strong membership of both benchers and licensees who want to move forward and want to see greater collaboration, consistency, that we were on a trajectory of programming, of rule changes, of expanding scopes for paralegal. They want to see those projects back on the positive trajectory, while also having the fallout, I would say, of the scandal be dealt with by the appropriate people. And so um, that, I think, is why we saw the reelection of Treasurer Wardle, is because there were enough benchers who wanted to see that momentum and that carry forward.
And so what, I guess maybe you can get into then of let's ride that momentum, and here are the things that we wanted to do. And in particular, you're reflective of, I'm a solo practitioner in Cornwall, and the people that are coming to me probably are echoing some of the challenges and being I mean, there's a new change for new solo practitioners, right? As there's a course that has to be completed now. So maybe you can kind of talk about, let's kind of look at that as a sign, right, of let's go forward. What's the Law Society and yourself in particular hoping to do, right, with some of those projects, and maybe you can share what you can share about some of the exciting things maybe that you're focusing on.
So one thing that I'm obsessed with is rural access to justice. And when I started as a bencher, coincidentally, in May of 2023, FOLA brought a motion, so the Federation of Law Associations brought a motion to the Law Society AGM asking that the Law Society investigate what is happening to solo and small firms in rural Ontario, because they were seeing a huge attrition of solo and small firms, the loss of the solo small firm lawyer, and whether that was um, connected to COVID, or had some sort of financial issue, or there's just not enough lawyers who are moving to small towns to set up practice. they want to know the answers. They want to know what happened and why. So, commensurate with that, contemporaneously with that, I received a fellowship from the Ontario Bar Association. I started asking lawyers and researching the issues and writing about the issue. Why are lawyers leaving rural Ontario? I'm a member of the Access to Justice Committee. I've just been appointed as the co-chair of the Access to Justice Committee at the Law Society, and it is a project that we're still seeing through, and we're getting the numbers, we're crunching the numbers, and we're looking at it from every angle. We're looking at it from the legal aid angle, we're looking at it from the number of lawyers, we're looking at it from a population issue. So we have a great team of policy analysts, researchers who are looking into that and reporting back to us on the issue so that we can report back to FOLA. These are multi-year projects that require so much time and high quality work, and we are getting that from our researchers at the Law Society. Um, I have seen an attrition of small solo and smalls, even in Cornwall. I know it is something that our courts and our judges are concerned about. I know that there are specific areas of law that are harder hit, family law, criminal law. Um, you know, not to harp on the scandal continuously, but when I think about it, from my perspective, we have this discrete issue of the scandal, right? And that needs to be we need to have redress on it, and we need to have answers on it. But I also think about the access to justice issues that are plaguing communities across Ontario. So, what are we going to do about the mom in Cornwall who has a legal aid certificate for a family law matter, who wants to see her children but cannot find a lawyer to take on her case and does not have the um, literacy skills to put together her own application? What do we do about that situation? Or what do we do about an Indigenous teenager in the north who is in custody waiting for a lawyer to serve him on his uh, uh, criminal law matter that is keeping him in custody and away from his family and away from his community? What do we do about those issues? So that to me are the pressing issues that have been plaguing our communities that we need answers for. We have a discrete issue of the scandal that needs an answer as well. We're addressing that, but let's get back to work. The benchers need to get back to work. We need to start um, uh, focusing on the issues that are affecting uh, people who are accessing legal care, and that is a phrase that my co-chair Cheryl Saran uh, is running with right now. So, like healthcare, legal care. How do we prioritize legal care in our communities? And so, I want to get back to work on that. We've seen some great work from the paralegals. Like Michelle Lamazo has been on it in terms of expanding scope for paralegal work. We're seeing that happen in family law, and that's where our access to justice needs are so dire. And so it's happening, but it's only because the benchers are getting back to the office and back to work on the issues that are really plaguing our communities.
I mean, and since you kind of touched on it there, right? I mean, is that getting back to work, is that, as you said, not also at the same time ignoring, hey, we had this big issue, right? Like, can those two, do they run in opposition, right? If you're saying, look, we're focused on these three things now, or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean we've forgotten about it. And I think there's certainly out there, as you said, is some kind of division, right? It's like, hey, they brought Treasure Wardell back, right? So is that just like, hey, everything is ignored, and we're just going to go on with this? Or can those both be true, right? Is that we can still deal with this issue, but at the same time deal with other things that were part of our mandate?
Yeah, I think that two things can be true. And in this case, two things have to be true, right? But it cannot be our focus all of the time for every issue. So the right people are in charge of that issue, of the scandal issue, and the rest of the benchers, and some of those benchers as well, are focusing on and getting back to work on the issues that we were working on before.
And some of those other issues, I mean, I think right before, or kind of simultaneously, there was also And I think I spoke to quite a lot of you a couple of years ago about governance, and I see there was a call for comments, and I don't know if those comments are shared yet publicly, or it's with that committee, but talks of changing. I mean, you said it's nice to make 53 friends. But that's like in law school where you made 300 friends on the first day, but then eventually you found your inner circle at the JCR, or whatever, the moot 205 or whatever room there, or whatever class you were in. The same thing. Like, is it the part of the changes is looking to get more condensed, right? A lot of other boards. I sit on a community legal clinic board, and there's like 8 or 10 of us, right? And is that, what are your thoughts there? I know there was a call for, like I said, consultation. There was responses a couple of months ago. I'm not sure if it's still what you can say publicly, but in terms of what is the governance of the law society going forward, in terms of the size of the board, the composition, how, you're talking about rural representation, right? Is that, is there a way to continue to have different interest groups involved at the Law Society without, if we change the structure, and or should we be changing the structure?
Yeah, I mean, I am deeply concerned about EDI issues at the board level. So I'm concerned about representation, making sure that we have the right amount of representation at the board, but not just, um, in terms of race, ethnicity, but also rural representation, and ensuring that every community in Ontario has a voice, including the North, including the East and the Southwest. Um, I I don't have a big problem with the way that it's structured right now, only with the numbers. And so sometimes it does feel like Parliament. Convocation feels like Parliament, but there's something to be said about tradition and about how things have been run for how many years. There's a beautiful tradition at convocation that needs to be respected and somehow upheld, and to dismantle that and to change it to a different structure. um, I think we have to think about what that would mean for years and years and years of tradition, decades of tradition. um, and so that's weighing pretty heavily on me. um, Convocation is different now. It's a hybrid community, right? So half of us are on a screen and half of us are in the room. And I had complained earlier about, being a mom and how hard it is as a mom to, fly in and out. But in terms of accommodations, there are so many. There's been convocations where I have been in this very bedroom joining convocation. And so is it unwieldy? Is it, are the costs associated with convocation exorbitant because there's so many of us? Or are we really representative? Is there enough of us to really promote representation across the province? These are the questions that the governance committee is asking. But for those of us who have read the O'Connor report, the recommendations went to the heart of governance. So maybe there's some questions about governance. Maybe there's a step back that we need to take about governance that comes right out of the O'Connor report before we get into restructuring or resizing. So, maybe we need to go back to basics first.
Yeah, and again, maybe that's part of this whole, like, two things can be a true at once, with respect to what's the move forward, right? Is to look at some of the things, whether in the O'Connor report, but as you said about governance, right? Because you can't simply just say, okay, let's just reduce it, 10 people or something, and keep everything otherwise the same, because where are those 10 people going to come from, right? And certainly, we've gotten into organized efforts of running together and things like that too. So, I mean, what else do you think you can sort of say with respect to those points there?
Well, should it be 10 people and it should be their full-time paid job? Um, because I can tell you if it was 10 people, based on the amount of work that I do at convocation and the amount of work that I do at the committee level, if it wasn't spread across 54 of us, I would be doing it full time. But because there's enough of us, we can share the work and we can also have practices, right? We can also maintain our practices on the side. And so if there are fewer of us, are we going to a paid board member model where we are actually hiring board members to leave their practices and come to convocation for these full-time jobs? Um, and are we appointing benchers? That's another question, was are we striking a committee? And then who's on that committee? How do we decide who's on the committee to appoint the committee, right? And if there's anything I've learned from being a bencher is that uh, we don't need any more committees. We really just don't need any more committees. And I think I said that once and it, garnered a laugh because I was like, I think the last thing this place needs is just another subcommittee. Please, let's not do that. But it, there's so many questions about it. I do not envy the governance committee. They have such a hard job and so many opinions. There are some opinions that are like, we should have a committee of 12. And then there's other committees that are say we should have, you know, a, a, a strength skills-based board, a nimble skills-based board. And then another, faction who thinks that it should be appointed. So how do we blend these opinions and what is the perfect formula? I don't know. When I ran with the Good Governance Coalition, restructuring governance was not my platform. In fact, I don't think I even understood what that meant. And uh, when I came to convocation, I still don't think I knew what it meant. And to me, it didn't feel as urgent of a priority as, we need to support solo and small firms. And now I still prioritize, the support of solo and small firms across the province, primarily in rural communities, because it's just something I'm so deeply passionate about. And um, people who are passionate about governance, let them run with it, let them do it, because they can do the weighing and the consultation and the conversations about that. But I don't envy them. My biggest concern is that there is rural representation, strong rural representation on that on whatever board structure we come up with.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess let's look as we wrap up here. I mean, you keep bringing up the rural representation. So, what are again personally, whether you want to expand on anything you've said thus far with respect to that, or if there's other things, in terms of your priorities, right, in terms of what you'd like to see done with the remainder of your term, if you can have more active involvement in certain, all the different committees you're on, what would you like to see, done before, your time is up? And I mean, I don't know if I'm talking about your time's up, is it up after 2 years? If are you looking at continuing on? If you're fortunate enough to run and get reelected, or what are your thoughts on kind of what you like to do with your time at the Law Society as a venture?
I don't know, JP, would you vote for me? Um, but just putting it out there. Uh, Listen, we need to support solo and small firms as much as possible. I think the solo and small firm course is fantastic. It is great. Um, I have been writing about solo small firm issues with my co-author, Anne Marie McElroy. We may or may not have a textbook coming out very, very soon with LexisNexis, so we're very excited to launch that in this upcoming year. I would love to see ways to support young lawyers on breaking out on their own. It is an exhilarating process. It is exciting. It's also very scary, but I did it at year 2. And I want to be able to support other young lawyers to do it as well, wherever they are in the province. Um, Whether it's by creating mentorship programs or finding them mentors in places that they wouldn't have thought of, like Elliott Lake or Alexandria, Ontario, um, in Simcoe, Ontario. All of these places where practicing law can be fun and rewarding, but also can contribute to quality of life. I want to teach people how to be legal aid lawyers because there is a really rich and diverse practice that can be had by learning how to serve that population, a population that has legal aid certificates. We need more legal aid lawyers. There's also underserved areas of law like child protection, mental health, consent and capacity, substitute decision maker work. Uh, These underserved areas need lawyers. We need to train lawyers how to do it. So whether it's, creating the right mentorship matches and ensuring that communities have, at least one lawyer who is doing this work that can bring on younger lawyers. That's something I'm really, really, really deeply passionate about. Maybe it's about expanding articling or about expanding um, uh, resources from the Law Society. Whatever it is, whatever we can do to support, I would love to get behind those projects.
I guess it goes without saying, we've certainly touched on it, in a number of things, but, a lot of times, with, and perhaps maybe something else you might hate of being a bencher is, you said, I ran with the good governance group and everyone kind of paints the entirety of that group, with one brush. Now it says, well, is this good governance or is this big governance? And it's like, well, you're all kind of treated the same, but as you're pointing out, well, look, we've voted differently on, the treasurer or this issue, or I hear my thoughts on governments or governance, and it may be different than some of your colleagues. So, kind of how would you say in terms of to respond to that? Because that seems to keep coming up, right? Is that people want to put this as a dichotomy of, whether it's good governance and full stop, or the fact is, there it's not two diametrically opposed positions, right? And even within those groups, I would imagine
Yeah.
various views are shared. So what would you say kind of in response to all of that?
Some of my deepest disagreements have been with people who I ran with on the Good Governance Coalition. And fundamental political disagreements have been with people who I ran with who, I'm being painted with that same brush. We are still colleagues. We're still friends. We still have wonderful conversations after those disagreements are over. Some of my best learning has happened by listening to the members of the Full Stop slate. I have learned so much about their position, about contrary views, about different ways of looking at an issue, and I give them so much credit and gratitude um, for that. And I have the same friendly conversations with them over the breakfast buffet or over coffee, and um, I consider them to be my colleagues as well. I really value the voice of dissent. I love that, that one person in the back who says, but what about this? And what about this idea? Because it's those voices of dissent who have slowly progressed in Canadian law, who have slowly progressed, to change law fundamentally. Examples in the cannabis laws or, the laws uh, about sex workers, right? So it just takes one voice of dissent in our legal system to create, a maelstrom of change. And I think I really, really value that about convocation. And that's, why I like the number 54 is because I like having all those different ideas. I really value all those different ideas. Um, does it get unwieldy? Yes, it gets unwieldy. Do the conversations sometimes, veer off track? Yes, of course. But I think it's like any, I'm Indian. It's like any Indian wedding, right? Like conversations go sideways, discussions go sideways. But you really have to like dig in and love it.
So thank you so much, Neha, for joining us. And I don't know if you have any final words of wisdom or anything else that you wanted to discuss, being a bencher, in light of all of this, and very appreciative, right? I mean, I know it's not easy for any of the benchers to come forward and speak in a public setting with all of these things that are happening in the background, or being even sure what you can say. But I think it's certainly very important to hear from the benchers, right? Of here's kind of I'm standing out here and answering your questions. And whether it's happening with groups like FOLA or the CLA or the OBA and all sorts of things, just to people want to know what's going on, right? I mean, and I appreciate that you take the time, and I'm certainly anyone listening could echo the same thing. So thanks again for joining us. Any final words that you'd like to share? And thanks again.
Yeah, I can say that it is really an honor to be a bencher. Never in a million years. This was not on my list in 2007 when I started law school with you, JP. I had no idea that this was on my radar, and it has been a total honor to be there. I was flattered on May 1st of 2023 when I saw the outcome of the votes. I pinch myself every time I get on a plane to Toronto. It feels like a dream come true. So thank you to everyone who voted for me. Um, I receive your emails. I do receive your emails. This is a message to all the licensees and the public. I do receive your emails, and I do my best to respond if I can respond. So please, you know, I actually am a true extrovert and look forward to chatting with people. So do reach out to me.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of people who went to law school, I think I'd be remiss there to not shout out Gloria there. That's like doing like World Cup roller derby, of
Amazing.
random like things. If you think back to 2007, but I guess that's important, right? Is that there are different paths and different people in the legal profession that are all looking to you and your colleagues as you're the representative of the Law Society, right? And certainly, again, it's in addition to being a mom, as you said, and in addition to being a solo practitioner, criminal lawyer in Cornwall, right? So, power to you. Thanks again for joining us, and thanks for everyone for listening. Take care.
Thanks for having me.